To the White House race now, where despite controversy, Donald Trump continues to dominate the Republican field. A CBS News New York Times poll out today shows Trump way in front with 35% of GOP support.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz is in second place with 16%, and retired neurosurgeon Ben Carson rounds out the top three with 13%. Here with more on this from Washington is CBS News political analyst Jamelle Bouie. Let's talk, Jamelle. We're looking at numbers now in our latest CBS News poll that is probably the highest that we've seen for Donald Trump. His 35% is the highest number CBS News has recorded for the frontrunner. So what do you make of these numbers?
Well, it's interesting. If you put those in sort of a broader average of poll numbers, Trump is basically at 30% across the board. It's really remarkable. What I see there is that Trump has a very durable floor of support in the Republican primary. He's never dropped below 25% since entering the race, at least not in the average of polls. And I don't expect him to drop any further. The question is, how high is his ceiling? This poll suggests that his ceiling is actually pretty high. It may even reach 40%, a solid plurality of Republicans. And so I think, right now it's almost the middle of December. We're just a month and a half from voting from the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. I think Republicans need to start asking themselves very seriously, is Trump actually able to win a primary, win multiple primaries? And if that's the case, then I think the party has quite a bit of soul searching to do. What is it going to do in the event that Donald Trump isn't just the polling leader, but the actual leader in terms of voting?
Jamelle, in your latest article for Slate, it's called Why We're Stuck with Trump. You bring up the point that before Donald Trump made his latest comments, several of the other Republicans already advocated for screening refugees, and that his comments aren't much different than what was already said. So take us to that next step then. You have said, based on all of that, Donald Trump is sort of following where the puck is going, to use a hockey analogy there.
A Wayne Gretzky quote, to be specific. I think what's happening is that Trump is looking at the broad tenor of Republican rhetoric, which, because of the party's decision to not moderate on taxes and not moderate on immigration, has really taken a sharp turn towards identity politics. So Trump is looking at the landscape of rhetoric and taking things that are clearly appealing to people and kind of just like running with them to their extreme. So like I said in the piece, the conversation about keeping refugees out or keeping Muslim refugees out, about limiting immigration from Muslim countries, Trump sees that and says, this is appealing to people, let me just go to the natural conclusion of that. I'm not sure where else that can lead. He's already sort of taken the maximal approach at immigration. He wants to deport 11 million people. He wants to keep all Muslim immigrants and even Muslim Americans abroad out of the United States. It's kind of hard to go beyond that, absent going even more extreme with internment camps, a la the Japanese in the 1930s. That's kind of the next step, and I'm not even sure Donald Trump is going to take that next step.
Yeah, and you argue in your piece that this leaves Republicans with quite a challenge if he's just following the puck, following along with arguments that he's heard before. Ejecting him may do as much damage as keeping him.
Right. It's clear that Donald Trump represents a meaningful number of Republican voters. It's sort of an unknown of how many voters that is, but it's a meaningful number, and there's evidence that they're actually very much devoted to him as a figure. There is a focus group done last night by Republican pollster Frank Luntz, which found that after 2.5 hours of Trump supporters being subjected to pretty much every argument against Trump, they ended up more supportive of him. And so what happens if you somehow manage to, eject him from the party? Do you tear the party apart as Trump supporters join him in a third party run? I don't think Republicans want to risk that. And so instead, what they're doing is trying to find a way to accommodate him, to work around him. But even that leaves him in a bad place. The longer Trump, I think, stands as a representative of Republicans, the more likely it is that every effort at outreach the party has done over the past 3 years is completely destroyed. That when it comes next year, they will not just do poorly with minorities and young people and so on and so forth, they will do worse than they did in 2012.
Jamelle, Donald Trump tweeted earlier that he's postponing his meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel until, quote, after he becomes president. Clearly, he is not a man who lacks confidence. But let me ask you how that kind of move might be perceived here in the United States.
You know, I think among sort of serious Republicans, Washington Republicans, it's obviously something that seems irresponsible and self-aggrandizing. But when you think about the people who are supporting Trump, who are kind of marginally connected to the American electorate, who are typically not voting that often, who aren't terribly informed, I think they look at this and they see a bravado that they admire. They see the same bravado that Trump has demonstrated since he's been in the race. And there's nothing here whatsoever that diminishes his standing with them. I mean, the paradox, at least for establishment Republicans, of the Trump phenomena is the more they attack him, the more people like Paul Ryan and Jeb Bush and name any sort of mainstream Republican, the more they attack him, the better he looks to the people who support him, people who are either not connected to the Republican Party or disenchanted and angry with Republican leadership.
Boy, political operatives having to rip up their playbooks on this side. CBS News political analyst Jamelle Bouie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.